Welcome everybody to the Boat Buyers Secret Weapon video series. I am your host, Captain Matt, and today we're going to talk about pontoons and comparing new pontoon boats. There is a lot of pontoon manufacturers out there, and we're going to talk about how to tell them apart, which ones have different construction types to look for. And if you look at all of the different pontoon manufacturers, and I don't even believe this is all of them. This is a pretty good list, and there's over 40 of them here. And when you go to a boat show, you'll have at least 10 of them at any one boat show, maybe 20. There was a show down in Florida that had over 30, or no, it was Georgia. It was Atlanta, Georgia show, had over 30 pontoon manufacturers represented. And it's just a sea of sameness. And I wanted to share how to tell the difference. You can see anywhere from Aqua Patio, Avalon, Barletta, Bennington to Trifecta, Veranda, and the list goes on and on. So this is the way I view the pontoon market, and it's on somewhat of a continuum. So there's not a category specifically, but it's on a spectrum. The value models, the cheaper models, the ones that are usually advertised with a specific price, and there's some things to watch out for on those. The mid-level, a good quality boat, but not the most, not the highest quality, and not with the most features, but a good solid boat in most cases. And then you have the luxury line, which are going to be the most expensive, have the best material, and have the most options and amenities. Now, what I think is important to know is that one is not better than another. There's one that's right for your specific situation, depending on your budget, depending on the body of water that you're going to be boating on, depending on how you're going to boat, when you are going to be out there on your pontoon. And these are all things to take into consideration. If you are going to be out on the water on a busy lake, let's say the Lake of the Ozarks, or you're going to be on a lake that gets really choppy, maybe one of the Great Lakes, you're going to be in some really active choppy water. Well, in that case, and you're going to be boating on Saturday afternoon at 2 o'clock in the afternoon, that you're going to be out there when everybody else is. My recommendation would be to stay away from some of the value pontoon boats. They're going to break down quicker. They're not going to be as enjoyable, and maybe if you need to hit a certain budget, maybe you go with something pre-owned if you can find it. The alternative is if you're on a small little lake that doesn't get real choppy and you want to watch your budget a little bit, then go towards a value boat. They can be a great way to get on the water and get on the water without breaking the bank. So it's all dependent on what's right for you. So in the Boat Buyers Secret Weapon Toolkit, we've got a checklist that you can use that helps you figure out what's most important to you, so you can evaluate each pontoon model that you maybe see at a boat show as you're shopping around to the dealers looking at the new boats. You can determine which is right for you. So when you start looking at pontoons, and we'll get into the manufacturers in a little bit, I'm not going to tell you which one to buy. But I'm going to tell you some insights on some of them that you probably didn't know. But when you're looking to buy a pontoon, the first thing to decide is, do you want a pontoon or a tri-toon? Now, the benefits of the tri-toon is you have one more pontoon down the center of the boat, which gives you more structural support. More structural support, it also gives you more flotation. With more structural support and more flotation, you're going to float higher in the water. You can put more weight on the back, or horsepower, so you can go faster with more horsepower. So a regular pontoon, you might put a 150 on at the top end, and that's going to be about as much as that can hold. Maybe a 175. If you go to a tri-toon, on some of the tri-toons they're putting 300, 425s, twins, even triple engines on a tri-toon, because you have more buoyancy, you have more structural support, so it can take that torque. So that's the first decision. Once you decide, do I want the pontoon, which is going to allow me to get some people on the boat, put a 90, a 115, maybe a 150 on it, and get out and be happy with the performance of that setup? Or do I want to go faster and do more water sports and lean towards the tri-toon? Or am I operating in rough water conditions where I need that extra buoyancy? Or am I going to be putting 10, 14 people on this pontoon consistently, and I need that extra buoyancy, otherwise I'm not going to go hardly at all? So that's your first decision. Once you've made that decision, you want to start thinking about your horsepower. How much horsepower do we need to move this boat, to do the types of things that we want to do? So in one of my other pontoon buyer guides, I think it's in the first time, the how to buy your first pontoon, and there's also another one. I'll link it in the notes in the description of this video. But it gives you the kind of the range of the matrix of horsepower to speed. So a 50 horsepower may go 15 to 18 miles an hour at the very top end, where a 150, excuse me, get that out of there, a 150 on a tri-toon, that may run 30 to maybe 40, 42 miles an hour at the very, very top end. And so that's the next decision. I'm going to talk about how much the engine impacts the cost of the boat and how you can use that to figure out where you are in the spectrum of value to luxury. And then the third choice you have is the layout and the quality. So once you decide pontoon, tri-toon, and the horsepower, now you can get into what brand should I look at? What layout should I look at? Do I want to go with the quality brand, or do I want to go with the mid-level, or do I want to go with the value? And you can start zeroing in your search so you can then find the best pontoon at the best deal. And again, the Boat Buyer's Secret Weapon Toolkit can help you zero in on that. But one thing that's also valuable to know is, well, when I look at a boat, it could have the same pontoon setup, the same layout, the same size, everything exactly the same, and yet with the 50 horsepower, it is significantly cheaper than with the 115 or the 150. Well, the reason for that is the cost of the engine has a huge impact on the overall cost of the boat. Now, it depends on if you go Yamaha or Mercury or Suzuki or Evinrude or any of the Honda, any of the other outboards. I've done a video on outboard horsepower, which goes into some detail on the different outboard power. I'll link that below as well in the description. But it's interesting to know how much you're paying for the horsepower so that you can tell, okay, if the engine is about this much, then I can assume that the cost of the boat is this much, and the cost of that extra pontoon is about this much. A third pontoon to add to a boat could be anywhere from $7,000 to maybe $3,000 if it's a shorter sport tune. And I'll talk about that in just a little bit. But it's really important to know so you can tell not how much the engine is. That's going to be the same. If you put a 150 Yamaha on any pontoon manufacturer, it's going to be about the same. But what's the quality of the boat? What's the price of the actual boat construction? And that's going to be helpful for you to decide. So this is in no particular order, but I wanted to give you just a lowdown on some of the bigger producers of pontoons and where kind of my opinion, based on seeing all of these boats, researching all these boats at boat shows, knowing some dealers that sell each of these, knowing even some of the manufacturers themselves and the presidents of the company. I've got these relationships that I'm going to try to share with you my opinion. Now, over the years, this is going to change from year to year. Sometimes they get taken over by a new company, or they have some other changes, and it may change. But right now, as I record this in 2019, the luxury brands, you're looking at Bennington, Harris, Barletta, Manitou, Avalon, Premier, Sanpan, Aqua Patio, which are owned by Godfrey. In kind of that mid-range, you've got Cypress K, which is owned by Brunswick, which is also owns Harris. Sweetwater, which is another Godfrey brand. Larson, the Larson Escape, Lowe, Crestliner, Regency, SouthBay, which my parents have a SouthBay. They've got a SouthBay tri-toon with the 150, a great boat. I'm over 200 pounds. I can ski behind it. I slalom behind it just last year with about 6 people on the boat, and it was adequate. It's a nice boat, and they're in the mid tier. A value boat, the Sun Tracker at Bass Pro, Misty Harbor, Pond King, which makes some smaller boats, Montego Bay, Quest, Princecraft, Landau. Now, there's a whole bunch of other ones out there. I know that, but this is just a good idea so you can kind of zero in on where do they fall as it relates to other boats. And what you'll find, obviously, is that the further on the luxury side you go, the more expensive they're going to be. The further they go on the value side, the more likely things are going to break, and the more likely that they're going to cheap out on some parts and some construction that could cause you issues as you go down the line. So figure out where your budget stands, where your boating lifestyle stands, and make your decision where you want to be price-wise, and then start zeroing in on, okay, where can I get the best one for me? So I can't go and say, hey, you should buy a Cypress K instead of a Sweetwater, because I don't know what's important to you. Each of those does things different. The other thing that you want to pay attention to is there are some luxury brands that have value models, okay? So some of these luxury brands are going to change the way they build their boats on some of their lower level models, the things that you don't necessarily see. You may feel that the upholstery is downgraded a little bit, but there's also some construction changes that they may not tell you about that I want you to know about. So Bennington has the SV and the S models. Harris has the cruiser models. Barletta just released their E-Series. Manitou has the Aurora and the Oasis. Avalon, the GS, the LS, and the Venture. Some of them, they change the construction. So, and we're going to talk about this in some detail so you can ask good questions and you say, man, this Barletta or this Harris or this Bennington, this Avalon seems like a great deal. I thought these were a lot more. Well, you may be buying that middle of the road or the value models to get that price point lower, and some of the construction is different. So let's talk about where some of those differences could come in this construction. And the first is the way they do their nose cone. How large is that nose cone? What material do they use? How thick is that aluminum that they use? How do they do their splash guard, which is that top arrow right there? And how do they attach the nose cone to the pontoon and the weld that their employees are putting on the pontoon? So let's start with the nose cone. The longer the nose cone, the more it's going to slice through rough chop. So if you're on a rough water lake or you're boating on a rough area, the larger the nose cone, the longer the nose cone, the more sharper that point, the better it's going to run through chop, but that's a more expensive way to build a pontoon, and you're going to pay for that. The splash guard, the longer and the better positioned, and the shape of it is going to determine how well that splashes the water down, makes it a drier ride in the boat. Again, to do it the right way is always more expensive. Some people do it a way that it cuts some price off. It's easier to manufacture, more efficient to manufacture, but it may not do as good of a job on the water. So just pay attention to that. The second, the engine well. So the engine well is a separate unit typically that is welded, bolted onto the construction of the boat. They'll call it the frame of the boat. Now, the thickness of the aluminum in that engine well will determine how much vibration you get, how sturdy it feels, how sound, the vibration and sound that you'll get from hanging that engine on there. If that's not super important and the price is more important to you, then by all means don't worry about it. But you do want to know, hey, is this engine well gonna be suitable for the horsepower that I'm hanging, the conditions I'm operating the boat, and the price that I'm paying? So this is what the construction looks like under a boat. This is a tri-toon. We're going to talk through these arrows a little bit. So the first one up top you'll see is the engine well. So you can see it's kind of a separate module. Whoa, a separate module on the transom of the boat. You can check that out and see how it's affixed. Ask the dealer or whoever your sales rep is about how they do that, so you can compare one manufacturer to the other. These two in the middle. So this is a tri-toon, but this is what some of them would call a sport tune. It is a cheaper way to get more buoyancy and more performance and allow more horsepower on that boat to get better speed with cutting some of the costs. So the sport tune goes about a halfway to 2/3 down the center of the boat, but it isn't built all the way into the engine well, right? So you can see where that's open. A full tri-toon would go all the way down and be the same length as the two outside tunes, or near the same length. That's going to be a little bit more expensive. So it's, if you are on a very rough lake, I would say, hey, make sure you go with that full third tune and just check under the boat, because that may be an extra $2,000 of difference in cost. And if you're comparing one that's got a full tune, one that's got a sport tune, is what I'll call it. Everybody uses a little bit different terminology, but now you may not be comparing apples to apples. And you'll want to know, my big thing is, I want you to know what you're buying before you buy it. I don't want you to be surprised or caught off guard or not know something that would have changed your decision. Okay? The fourth arrow here on the side, this middle one, it's pointing towards what's called a keel. So that keel is a little triangle pie piece that runs the full length of the pontoon. And that basically allows the pontoon to go straighter, because it's kind of got a little rudder that's in the water holding that boat going straight down the line. It gives you sharper turns, more tight corners where you've got better control of the boat. It is about performance. If you're buying a boat, a pontoon that you're not super concerned about performance and turning characteristics, you may not need it. A 20-foot pontoon with a 50, I wouldn't really care about that. Now, if I had a tri-toon with a 300 horsepower, yeah, I would want to make sure that I've got that full-length keel. This bottom one pointing to the sport tune, you'll also notice this little pie piece right here, and that's called a lifting strake. Every manufacturer does it a little bit different, but essentially what it does, it allows the pontoon to act more like a fiberglass boat and plane, get up on top of the water and get on plane. So when you're going slow, it's just kind of chugging through the water. When you get going faster, it lifts you up because it gives you more surface area, the way it's shaped, and it can give you tighter, more controlled turns as well. Some of the manufacturers will put, like on this boat, there's only 2 lifting strakes on the center pontoon. Others will run them full length on the inner part of the outside pontoons. It's going to give you better ride characteristics. It's going to give you a little bit more speed and a little bit more control in your turn. That option is going to cost, I don't know, $1,000, $2,000, and you need to make the decision, is that important to you? And does the one manufacturer do it just on the inner tubes and they don't do it on the outer? Is that an upgrade? And you'll want to know that. And then finally, you'll see this arrow on the top right here pointing to this little round part on the tube. Some pontoon manufacturers will put a plug in the pontoon, and the theory is if you get water in it, you can pull that plug and you can drain it. Well, other manufacturers will say, hey, you shouldn't get water in your pontoon at all. You should make your welds properly, and you should never have a puncture in your pontoon unless there's damage. So we are not going to do that, because the first place to leak on a pontoon is where that plug is. Now, my belief is it shouldn't have a plug, but I've been on boats that have had both, and it hasn't been an issue, but it is something to consider and ask why they do it the way they do it, and then make your determination. Okay? So we're going to one step back. Is okay, so we saw the pontoons, and we saw how those are built with the strakes and the keel and the and all that construction. But what can't you see? Well, what you can't see a lot of times, because there's plywood on the top, and like that last picture, there's aluminum skinned on the bottom, you can't see what the construction, these bracings or beams, are on the connecting the pontoon. That's the base of the boat. Now, one way to make a boat cheaper is to space these out more. Take out a cross member or two, and instead of having them every 12 inches, do them every 18 inches or every 24 inches. Also, some may say, well, they don't need to be as close together up in the bow because that's not where all the torque is. All the torque is in the back where the engine is, so we're going to put them closer together in the rear of the boat and space them out a little further in the front. The rougher the lake, the choppier the lake, the closer you want those cross members to be, the less you're going to be out on a busy weekend, or the calmer your lake is, the further out it'll be, and it's not that 24-inch cross members is fine if you're running a 50 or a 90 or even a 115 horsepower on a nice quiet lake. Okay, so that's something that you can't see, that you'll have to ask the questions of how do they do it, what kind of material, how heavy is that material, and again, the more expensive the boat, usually the thicker and the better construction is going to be, and then you'll have to make your determination of what makes the most sense. So this gives you a picture of kind of how it all goes together. So you've got your separate pontoons, you've got the bracing on the pontoons where these cross members are going to go. They come down, they attach the tunes together. Now you've got your base, and then you'll have your plywood go on top, and you may have that aluminum skin go on the bottom, which if you're running a bigger horsepower and you're running any speeds at all, I would say definitely a 150 and above, maybe even a 115 horsepower and above, is you'd want to probably get that aluminum skin. It gets you a little bit more structural support, and it makes that water that's splashing up from those tunes not hit your cross members, and not get, I call it a chugging effect, where it's hitting the cross members and slowing you down and slowing you down. That aluminum skin, it just hits it and kind of glances right off of that aluminum skin. So you want to ask those questions because a lot of it you can't see. So some manufacturers will be a couple $1,000s less, and everything else looks the same. It's got the same 225 Yamaha, 225 Mercury on it. The upholstery looks to be of similar quality. The layout's very similar, but one is cheaper than the other. Well, you may find that difference in the cost in this construction. One may be a sturdier built boat than the other, and then you need to make the decision of what's most important to me, that extra $2,000 or that extra rigidity in the boat. And then the final area that you'll find some differences is in the fence rails. So the fence rails, you'll notice that some manufacturers will run the fencing from top to bottom, and that full length of the fence will have fencing on it. Some manufacturers will, instead of having a 26-inch fence, they'll make it taller or shorter in some areas and taller in other areas. Every time they can cut down the material, they can cut down the expense of the boat, and they can lower the cost and get more to that value side. The other place that they do that is in the size of the rails and the way they do their welds and their anodization process. So you want to ask questions about, hey, how do you do it? Do you weld it and then dip it in an anodization pit or tub, or do you anodize each piece and then weld it, leaving your welds unanodized? And the anodization process is basically a corrosion protection. So if you dunk each piece and then weld it, your welds are more likely to rust and cause problems down the line, which could impact resale value. But those are all things that you want to compare, because you may not notice that 2-inch difference in fence height from one model to another when you're on it. But when you're out on the water and your kids are there, you may not have that safety factor, or it may not be a difference for you, and you may want to save that extra money and go with the value side of things. Okay, so the furniture, the construction of the furniture, and the upholstery. Now here's one thing that is very interesting, a lot of people don't know, is a lot of manufacturers, especially in that mid and value tier, are utilizing the same furniture manufacturers. They get their upholstery pattern on it, but they're getting the same furniture from the same factory as their counterparts at the other 10 other manufacturers that are at the boat show. So the furniture, you'll see a lot of similarities. Some of them build their own, some of them do their own thing, but that quality of the construction and the quality of the upholstery are going to have an impact on the price that you pay, and the ease of maintenance and the longevity of that it's standing up to the elements as well as standing up to the mold and the mildew that you'll find. But I mentioned there are 3 choices to make when you're buying a pontoon. You want a pontoon or a tri-toon, what horsepower do you want, and then the layout. I think that the layout is a very important decision. This is the classic layout, the L-shaped seating with the 2 couches up front and your helm station there on the starboard side. The center walkthroughs, the rear lounges, the fishing setup, that decision is an incredibly important one. And for most people, they can get swayed to what the dealer wants to sell them. So try to make that decision of what's going to be best for you, so that you avoid the salesperson kind of pushing you in a direction that may not give you the most enjoyable boating experience. Other times, hey, they've got a unit that they want to move and it's got a layout that would be adequate and be great for you. Hey, there's an opportunity to save a couple $1,000, then take it. But just make sure that you don't get pushed into a layout that's not going to be the most fun for you and your family just to save a few $100. So there's always that balance of exactly what I want versus cost. That's a balance that you're always making in the boating world. So with that you can pick up the Boat Buyer's Secret Weapon Toolkit at boatbuyersecretweapon.com. That's a free gift for checking out these videos. We hope it's valuable. We hear from person after person that it's incredibly valuable as they're shopping and going through the buying process. Some of them first-time buyers, and it's all brand new to them. Others are using the piece that is for how to demo the right way, how to maximize your trade, how to get the best boat loan and boat insurance, and it gives you kind of a structure so that you're making a wise decision. You can also check out our other videos. Here's a couple that are recommended for you. Subscribe to our channel. Just click that subscribe now button, and you will be updated every time we create a new video. And there's some extra cool stuff for subscribers. And then remember, you can always get your toolkit at boatbuyersecretweapon.com/toolkit. Thank you for watching. Be sure to like and comment down below, and we'd love to hear what else you would like to see and hear in these videos, and we will get that done for you as quickly as we can. Thanks a lot.